Did you know that Reading Rainbow theme song was originally sung by Tina Fabrique and then more recently by Shaka Khan?
Welcome to the Lore of the South.
Follow the show on social media to keep up with what's going on and to see pics that go along with each episode. Search for Lore of the South on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
Welcome back to Lore of the South with me, Kelly Cruz. How the heck are y'all doing? Still flowing fairly smoothly around here for the moment. Knock on wood. We just had Valentine's Day, and producer and Mike and I aren't too big into the whole Valentine's Day thing. Instead of expensive flowers and stuff like that, we usually put the money into a weekend getaway that also doubles as a research project for the podcast. Oh, the nerd life. Alright, y'all, I normally don't talk aliens and UFOs and stuff like that, and honestly, I'm really not afraid of ghosts. Never been. It's not a scary thing to me, but flipping aliens, y'all, since I was a little kid, like the gray alien, I can't even remember the name of the book now, and then it was turned into a movie, but the gray alien with the big old black eyes, that scared the mess out of me. Still does. Don't like the little boogers. Do not like them. That being said, even though we're a spooky history podcast, we really just can't ignore current events, can we? So, we had the Chinese spy balloon, and it was detected entering Alaska on January 28th. We shot it down on February 4th off of the coast of South Carolina. February 10th, an unknown object shot down off of the coast of Alaska. February 11th, joint effort from Canada and the U.S. shoots down another UFO. Then, on February 12th, we got another one. This one first appearing over Montana, then down over Lake Huron on the border of Michigan and Ontario. So first off, the Chinese one, it was flying around 60,000 feet in the air. These other three were at around 20,000 feet. So those lower altitude objects could have interfered with commercial air traffic, and that's why they were shot down nearly on sight. The spy balloon that was the size of 3 buses, we're going to call it the triple bus spy balloon, wasn't a risk to commercial flight, so it was allowed to get off the East Coast before being taken out. We, meaning NORAD or whatever secret military entity, scrambled the ability of the triple bus spy balloon to be able to send data back to China. So they pretty much took it out of commission before they shot it down. But we did. We got rid of it, and now we're in the process of recovery. Apparently, much of it has already been brought ashore and is being dissected for as much info and intel as possible. Now, what about these others? Are they copycats for attention? Are they aliens? Or do we have a wag the dog situation going on? Meaning, look over here while we do this other BS we don't want y'all to pay attention to. I think producer Mike and I will take the rest of this conversation over to Patreon. So if you like the conspiracy theory side of things, join us over there for more. And now it's time for History Making News. Today's news comes to us from the Smithsonian Magazine. A Viking cemetery has been located in Derby, England, known as Heathwood, dating back to 865 CE. It contains 59 burial mounds, and only 20 have yet to be excavated. It also contained the only Viking cremation site found in the British Isles to date. In this site, bone fragments have been found, and isotope analysis has been conducted. But first, what were the bones from? One fragment was from a man, one from a horse, a dog, and a pig, all of which had one thing in common. They were all from Scandinavia, meaning that the Vikings had brought livestock and companion animals with them across the sea, where in previous years, they had been doing a crash and grab kind of technique along the British coastline. Land, ransack a monastery, kill some priests, steal all the good stuff, and sail for home. But the bringing of livestock with them shows they were in England to stay. The Vikings were now settlers in an already settled land, and they brought man's best friend with them. Today's topic is all about the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. The Crescent was suggested to me by listener Kathy. She sent me an email probably nearly a year ago with a couple of show suggestions. So y'all, it goes to show you I might not jump on your suggestion immediately, but I do keep track of them and who sends what in. So thank you, Kathy, for your topic, and I hope you're listening. And here we go with episode 60, Higher Learning and Quackery at the Crescent Hotel. The Crescent Hotel was the brainchild of the Eureka Springs Improvement Company and the Frisco Railroad. The resort was a way to draw the rich and famous into the small town of Eureka Springs, which had been known for its springs for hundreds of years, first amongst the Native Americans and then later by European settlers. Construction began in 1884 and was built using an especially hard type of limestone called magnesium limestone. It was quarried and transported along the White River. Special wagons had to be constructed for the transportation of the super heavy rock, and it was hauled for about 50 miles or so up to Eureka Springs. At the building site on the West Mountain, a team of Irish masons awaited the limestone so that they could start shaping them into the blocks that would make up the Grand Hotel. The walls of the hotel were 18 inches thick, and the head mason, O'Shaughnessy, predicted the hotel would withstand the destructive forces of time and would retain its original beauty for many years to come. And that it has. The hotel opened May 1st, 1886. The total cost of construction was $294,000. And y'all know I love to tell y'all what that is in today's money. And it equates to nearly $9 million today. It opened to great fanfare. The Republican presidential candidate gave a speech at the opening ceremony, and everyone was in awe of the opulence and modern fixtures of the resort. The modern features included hot and cold running water, a central heating system, hydraulic lift elevators, and lighting by Mr. Edison. The hotel flourished for just over a decade, but bookings in the winter became so few that the hotel became a seasonal one. It was leased to the Frisco Railroad Company in the fall of 1908, and the Crescent Women's College was opened then as well. The school was in session from September to June and helped to keep the hotel afloat in its off-season. The college was started by A.S. Maddox and J.H. Phillips, with Maddox acting as the school's president. In a time where women were mostly taught domestic skills in college, the Crescent School was dedicated to learning. Math, science, languages, English, and history were all taught. Though y'all, I did see that one instructor taught both French and hygiene. That was quite a combo. The hotel became a winter home to 88 students from 39 different states, along with their 9 instructors. Over the years, they increased their numbers and the number of courses offered to include speech, business, home ec, there's those domestic lessons I was talking about, and art. The school turned out several prominent graduates, one of which was the founder of the women's athletic programs at the University of Georgia. The Crescent Women's College advertised in national magazines. One such ad read, "The Crescent College and Conservatory for Women, on top of the Ozarks, famous for healthfulness and beauty of location. $300,000 fireproof building, rooms with private bath, elevator, accredited junior college. General courses include art, music, expression, and domestic science. The school was ran successfully until 1924, when the school's lease was up, and the hotel owners were more interested in selling the hotel than renewing the lease. The doors were closed on the women's college. In 1930, the locals of Eureka Springs opened the Crescent Junior College, though its life was a short one. In 1934, at the end of the term, the junior college was closed as well. And y'all, this is where the Grand Ole Hotel takes a dark turn. And I'm going to give you a trigger warning here. We're going to be talking about medical quackery, and it caused a lot of suffering. And it was all brought about by one man who was a big enough sociopath to believe his own BS. But I guess that's how those types usually are. One Norman Baker from Muscatine, Iowa. And isn't that like where the American Pickers are from? Aren't they from up that way somewhere? Anyways, I digress. But old Norman Baker, he was born on November 27th, 1882, and was the youngest of 10 kids. He dropped out of school at the age of 16 and started traveling from town to town, working as a machinist. Then one day, Norman found himself in the audience of a magic show, and this inspired young Norman to start his own traveling act. He found a mind reader by the name of Madame Pearl Tangley, and with her, Norman found success on the vaudeville circuit. When Madame Pearl left the troupe, Norman replaced her with a young college student by the name of Teresa Pender, and the two of them were soon married. They continued the tour for another 4 years before taking an extended break back home in Muscatine. And y'all, I'm assuming it's Muscatine. It may be Muscatine, but I'm going to say Muscatine. Sorry for not Googling it. It was while back in Muscatine in 1914 that Norman came up with his first invention, the air calliophone. Before now, automated calliopes, think of the old school merry-go-rounds with the organ music that plays along with them as you go round and round and up and down. They were ran by steam, but the calliophone was air-powered, and one would be much more portable than the old models. So Norman sold his first one for $500, which is nearly $15,000 today. He soon sold a second one, and with that second calliophone sold, he ditched the vaudeville routine and began manufacturing his new invention full-time, and he was soon a wealthy man. In 1915, at the age of 33, he started to shake things up. He divorced his wife and started running his first mail scam. He began an art school via correspondence called the Tangley School, though he admitted he didn't have any knowledge about art or teaching it. But the school, it was successful for a few years, making Norman about $75,000 a year. And y'all, that was bank in the teens. Heck, he made around $200,000 per year at the peak of his air calliophone manufacturing run. So he was doing pretty good for himself. Then in 1925, Norman got the bright idea to go into radio. He convinced the city of Muscatine in exchange for free water, electricity, and no taxes that he, through the power of radio, would popularize the small community and bring in more industry. So Norman's wishes were granted, and he applied for and received a license for a 500-watt station. The station went on air Thanksgiving Day in 1925. And basically, he became, and excuse me if y'all are a fan of this dude, and I'm sorry if you are, he kind of became the Alex Jones of his day. He used his time on air to feed into his rural community sphere of big business in Wall Street. Oh, and the AMA, the American Medical Association. Should we bring up colloidal silver, anyone? Soon he applied to up the watts to 10,000, and this license too was granted. He was now reaching the ears of somewhere around 1 million homes. In 1929, he was on to a new scheme. He caught wind about a doctor in Kansas that was running a cancer sanitarium and supposedly had a miracle cure. So, doing his due diligence, he asked for 5 volunteers, and he sent them to Kansas City to undergo the miracle cancer treatment and to test if it was the real deal or not. And this was in the spring of 1929. By November, Norman's volunteers began to die. Did this stop Norman from writing up articles about the miracle cure? Nope. If anything, he doubled down. He warned against using cooking utensils made from aluminum, claimed that surgeries, radium, x-rays were in no way a good way to treat cancer. Granted, radium is highly radioactive. Granted, the first part of the name kind of gives that away. And was highly carcinogenic. X-rays, we have now found high dosages of that can also cause cancer. But if you're looking for a tumor back in we're in the 20s here, if you're looking for a tumor, an X-ray is probably about the best way to find it. So again, he's just trying to sell his quackery in the best way he can. So he claimed that these things were in no way a good way to treat cancer. He even called surgeons cutters and belittled them in their butchering ways. See what I mean about Alex Jones? He's going up against the medical establishment and science. In January of 1930, Norman bought the formula for the cancer cure from the doc in Kansas City. In May, Norman's last test patient died, but he continued to publish the accounts of the miracle cure over and over again. Y'all want to hear what was in this miracle cure? Glycerin, carbolic acid, brown corn silk, clover leaves, and watermelon seeds. All of this was brewed into a tea and given to the cancer patients. Sometimes it was drank, sometimes it was dumped on maybe like a melanoma or something like that. But most of the time, he would use it as an injection and would inject some of the patients up to 7 times a day with this stuff. And in the first year of selling this concoction, Norman Baker brought in a whopping $444,000, nearly $8 million today. And up until now, Baker had only thought he was fighting with the American Medical Association. Now the AMA was fighting back. They published several articles calling out Baker's quackery and him using his radio and magazine platforms to undermine the AMA and the standard of care for cancer patients, all in the name of the almighty dollar. Norman then countered this attack by falsely claiming that the AMA had offered him $1 million for his cure. This back and forth between Baker and the AMA went on for quite a while. At one point, Norman files a $500,000 defamation lawsuit. Then he claimed the AMA sent assassins after him, which culminated into a shootout. A police report was filed, but no evidence was found. Y'all, this dude did not stop. So then he decides to host an outdoor demonstration to prove to the masses that his cure was the real deal. They believe that between 50 and 60,000 people came to Muscatine to witness Norman Baker's miracle cure. His years on the vaudeville circuit and radio had readied him to flim-flam the heck out of these people. He had past patients come forward and give their testimonials about how wonderful the cure was. Then Norman took a huge swig of the miracle drug to prove that it was safe, all the while joking about how real doctors were just about profit margins and that MD stood for more dough. But y'all, he had one last barn burner to show his gathered crowd. One of Baker's doctors, we're going to use air quotes around doctors, opened a man's skull while the patient was awake, exposing brain tissue, which Norman proclaimed to be cancerous. He then dumped his miracle cure into the open skull before him, declaring, "Cancer's cured." All of this was what old P.T. Barnum would have called a humbug. It was all a trick. That dude's skull wasn't open. It was just some more flim-flam from our con artist, Norman Baker. This was the beginning of the end for Norman in Iowa. The AMA set about campaigning to have Baker's radio license revoked. And in May of 1931, Norman's broadcast license was not renewed. His lawsuit against the AMA went against him, and after a stream of his patients and their families filed in to testify against him, from their testimonies enough evidence was gathered to file for an arrest warrant against Norman for practicing medicine without a license. He then fled to Mexico, where he promptly set up a new radio station and a small cancer hospital. In 1937, he returned to Muscatine, faced his charges, pled guilty, and served 1 day in jail. For all the stuff that he did, 1 day in jail. And y'all, all of this was going down while he was trying to run for state senate. I mean, should he be the picture next to the definition of psycho or sociopath or what? I mean, like, he was delusional, y'all. He lost his bid for the Senate seat, and that's when he fled Iowa for Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Once there, he bought the Crescent Hotel and turned it into the Baker Hospital. His ads for the hospital stated, "Where sick folks go to get well." But y'all, the AMA wasn't gonna give up on busting this guy. Can y'all guess what finally brought him down? The U.S. mail. Like Al Capone's tax evasion in the IRS, Baker, it was using the U.S. mail to defraud the public. He sent out ads via the mail, and his cure was pure quackery, and they busted him for fraud. Not for all the suffering and death and actual medical fraud, but for false advertising through the mail. In January of 1940, he was brought to trial and was found to have conned cancer patients and their loved ones out of millions of dollars. And for all he did, he only got 4 years in Fort Leavenworth and a fine for $4,000. He served his 4-year term, never admitting his guilt. One psychiatrist called him delusional, though he was once overheard telling someone that if he'd been able to keep his radio stations, he'd still be making millions off the suckers. So to me, it seems like he knew what he was doing. He wasn't actually delusional thinking that he was curing these people. He was a calculated con man who allowed a lot of people to die who might have been saved, and all for his own profit and prestige. He was released from prison on July 14, 1944. He then moved to Florida, where he lived a quiet life until passing away at the age of 76 in 1958. And now for the rest of the history of the hotel. In 1946, a group of 4 investors bought the property, and the old hotel went through a round of remodeling. The investors contracted with the Frisco Railroad to offer vacation packages to tourists. All was going pretty well until 1967, when faulty wiring started a fire in the penthouse level and pretty much took everything out down to the 4th floor. The hotel changed hands a couple more times before the current owners stepped in and bought the old girl, Marty and Elise Roengix. Sorry, y'all, I know I butchered that. The couple came up with a plan to reopen the Grand Ole Hotel in phases, but it wasn't without disturbing some of the resident ghosts. The hotel is now known as America's most haunted hotel. I think just about every TV paranormal group has investigated this place, ghost hunters and ghost adventurers included. From what I've been reading, y'all, there's a lot going on here. And let's start with the oldest spirits first. We have what is known as the most haunted room in the hotel, room number 218. It's said to be inhabited by one of the Irish Masons, called Michael, who died while helping to build the hotel. They say he fell to his death from the roof and has now taken up residence in room 218, where he's a bit of a trickster. He likes to flip the lights on and off, the TV will turn on at random, and it's even been said that ghostly hands can sometimes be seen reaching from the bathroom mirror. A Victorian gentleman, complete with well-groomed mustache and top hat, is often spotted at either the bar or the foot of the grand staircase. But if you try to approach him and make conversation, he vanishes. Is he a residual haunt or just a shy spirit? A former waitress in the Crystal Dining Room once spotted the reflection of a Victorian bride and groom in one of the room's mirrors. She even went as far as to say that the groom made eye contact before the couple slowly faded away. The spirits here get particularly festive during the Christmas holidays. One account says that overnight, the Christmas tree and all of its presents underneath were moved from one side of the room to the other, and to top it off, all the chairs in the room had been moved to form a semicircle around the tree. Maybe the ghosts were just helping to set up for passing out the gifts. In the kitchen, pots and pans have been known to fly from their hooks, and the translucent form of a little boy skipping about the kitchen has been seen from time to time. Could it be him letting the pans fly, or is he just a memory that the hotel keeps replaying? Another young spirit is more often heard than seen. She was one of the ladies who attended the women's college, and she apparently fell to her death from a balcony, and her screams can still be heard to this day. Lastly, we have the specters from the Baker Hospital. It was the practice of the hospital to remove the dead patients from their rooms at or just after 11 p.m., so not to disturb the other resident patients. And some nights, a nurse dressed in all-white uniform can be seen pushing a gurney down the hall, where she disappears when she reaches the end. Many guests have reported hearing the sounds of gurneys being pushed along the corridors, even when there's no one else about. An old switchboard would receive ghostly calls from the basement, which at one time held the autopsy room in the morgue. Smells of pipe smoke are common, and they say that one of the house, again here comes the air quotes, doctors was particularly fond of cherry tobacco in his pipe. They have even spotted the main quack himself, Norman Baker, still dressed in his white suit with a lavender tie. This had been sort of a uniform of his. What is it about the Crescent that holds on to all of this old energy? Maybe a lot of it has to do with the amount of trauma that has occurred here, but there is also a theory that it's the stone walls themselves. Limestone is a porous stone and can hold on to things from the environment. What if it can hold on to energy as well? A lot of moments are probably played on repeat, where other spirits seem to have an awareness about them. Maybe the secrets are within the walls. Side notes. So, old Norman claimed that his cures didn't require cutting, aka surgery, but that surely didn't stop him from taking specimens from his patients. Not sure if all the human bits and pieces were taken from the deceased or not. What we do know is that in 2019, the hotel had an archaeological survey done before expanding a parking lot. What the archaeologists found was what had been the dumping ground for the hospital. They uncovered hundreds of specimen jars, some of them intact and still had little bits of people floating in them. and many of the jars match some of the ones that Norman had printed up on flyers. And these jars, many of them, have been saved and placed back into old Norman's former morgue. And maybe this part goes without saying, but hotel employees noted an uptick in paranormal activity after the specimens were reintroduced. Is there any wonder? Okay, y'all, that was kind of a heavy one. So let's talk about our oldest buildings by state. And as always, these are brought to us by the Discoverer blog. In Illinois, okay, y'all, and this French, forgive me, I could muddle through some Spanish pronunciations, but French, whew. In Illinois, we have Fort de Chartres. Sorry, I know I butchered that. Though most of the fort today is made up of reconstructions. All of the foundations are original, and there is still one powder magazine intact, though it has had considerable work done to it as well. And all of this dates from around 1750. In Indiana, it's a near tie between the Grouseland Mansion, constructed between 1802 and completed in 1804, was once the home of William Henry Harrison, the first governor of Indian Territory and our 9th president. Then, just around the corner from Grouseland, we have the Territorial Capitol building. Its construction was began in 1800 and finished in 1805. So as you can see, these two buildings were neck and neck. So we're giving them both a place in our oldest buildings per state. And y'all, I want to thank Kathy again for the show recommendation. I hope you're still listening, Kathy. And if y'all have a show idea or just want to get in touch, y'all can email me and the show at loreofthesouth@gmail.com. And also, Elle, thank you for getting in touch and for your kind words. Your show idea is in my notebook, so keep an ear out. Though I may save it for Native American History Month, which is in November. I'll just have to see how everything lines up, but definitely hang in there for your topic idea. Okay, y'all. Some of y'all may not like this, but we now qualify to run commercials. So here on the main feed, you might hear one or two other podcasts being advertised. We've done this to help offset the cost of doing the show. We're hoping just to break even on hosting costs, and anything over that is a bonus. If you don't want to hear the commercials, think about joining the Patreon, because from here on out, episodes will be uploaded there. And these will be commercial free, as well as getting the bonus, at least one bonus episode a month. We may actually get a couple out this month because I want to talk about the balloons in the train and in Ohio and all of that stuff. So I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for that Patreon episode. And y'all, it's $3 a month or a little more if you want. So for that $3 a month, you can get ad-free listening. Sorry, I'm like all over the place here. Also, if y'all would and could, wherever you can, leave us a 5-star review and a few kind words, that would be amazing. And if you do, I'll read it out here on the podcast. Heck, y'all, I even read the bad ones, but don't get that in your head to leave us a bad review, please. There's a lot of work, even though we do love it. I love learning all this new stuff, learning old stuff. But anyways, y'all, follow us on social media. I post pictures to go along with every episode, and this one will probably be pretty photo heavy. If you have any questions about where my information comes from, I always cite my sources in the show notes. And with that, we'll talk to y'all later on Lore of the South.
Stay tuned for a preview of our latest Patreon episode.
David Pallades served for 20 years on the San Jose, let's say that again because I can say this word, San Jose Police Department before retiring. Did you want to add anything?
No, you're okay. Right on so far.
So, so after 20 years with the San Jose Police Department, he began writing books about, different. First, I believe he started off with Bigfoot books.
Yeah, it looks like he started with Bigfoot books and then kind of moved into this missing 411 thing.
Yeah, and then it progressed from there. I believe mentioned when he was approached by a couple of park rangers when he happened to be in a park helping with a search. And 2 park rangers independently came up to him and mentioned how people just randomly would go missing in the national parks with no evidence. Like, they would just vanish.
If you loved what you heard, check out the Patreon page for exclusive content by searching for The Lore of the South on patreon.com.